inflicted by the pandemic and associated disruptions. I call upon global financial institutions and the international community to take urgent measures and release all existing financial instruments to provide much-needed additional liquidity and secure better fiscal space for developing countries like Kenya to enhance social investment, support climate change adaptation and mitigation, and address security needs and resolve development financing challenges. On behalf of Kenya, therefore, I join other leaders in calling upon the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and other multilateral lenders to extend pandemic-related debt relief to the worst-hit countries, especially those affected by the devastating combination of conflict, climate change, and COVID-19. Furthermore, I urge the G20 to extend and expand the scope of the common framework to suspend or reschedule debt repayments by middle-income countries during the pandemic recovery period. At this point, I would like this distinguished assembly to take a moment and consider the peace and security landscape, a landscape currently beset with multiple challenges, yet abounding with considerable opportunities. Our home region of East and Horn of Africa is in particular burdened by significant conflicts and challenges with implications for the region's development. We stand on the cusp of first opportunity for galvanizing confidence-building measures to generate and sustain momentum towards sustainable peace. In its role as an anchor state in the region, Kenya has sustained our investment in diplomatic efforts to find lasting peace in multiple situations within and beyond the region. Although some processes have yielded undeniable success, challenges remain. I therefore strongly reiterate our call for partnership towards confidence-building measures and urge more concerted efforts towards sustainable peace and stability. Kenya is currently serving in the United Nations Security Council. I am proud to confirm that our engagement over the last 2 years has prioritized regional peace and security, countering terrorism and violent extremism, peace support operations, climate and security as critical contributions to the collective efforts to build a safer, more prosperous and peaceful world. I am also proud to state that Kenya has continued to champion closer cooperation between regional mechanisms and the Security Council as an effective means to achieving international peace and security. Kenya continues to advocate the renewal of the Africa Union security architecture, which draws comparative strength from the highly productive complementarity between the United Nations, the Africa Union, and the regional economic communities. Working closely with the 2 elected African countries of the A3 in the UN Security Council, we are committed to finding a stronger Africa voice in the Council and achieving a consensus-driven, rules-based multilateral system. It is our manifest intention to see greater Pan-Africanization of the global agenda in order to make multilateralism work for the people of the world in their diversity. It is time for multilateralism to reflect the voice of farmers, represent the hopes of villagers, champion the aspirations of pastoralists, defend the rights of fisherfolk, express the dreams of traders, respect the wishes of workers, and indeed protect the welfare of all peoples of the global South. Let me express the strong collective conviction of my country that the relevance, legitimacy, and moral authority of the United Nations will forever remain deficient, undermined by the absence of comprehensive reforms of the United Nations Security Council. We therefore remain firmly committed to reforming the Security Council to make it a more effective, representative, and democratic global institution. Given the magnitude and variety of challenges the world continues to confront, a more fit for purpose United Nations is urgently needed, one that possesses the legitimacy and efficacy in dealing with threats to international peace and security. A just and inclusive world order cannot be spearheaded by a United Nations Security Council that persistently and unjustly fails the inclusivity criterion. Similarly, threats to democracy will not be credibly resolved by an undemocratic and representative Security Council. It is vitally important for this critical institution to reflect the values it is entrusted to protect, to defend, to uphold on behalf of humankind. We welcome the call by President Biden this morning for the expansion of the membership of the Security Council as a significant step in the right direction, and we look forward to building consensus for the actualization of the same. The COVID-19 pandemic severely disrupted health systems, seriously challenging the implementation of programs that are vital for the realization of health-related sustainable development goals. To place us firmly back on track and accelerate our progress towards these SDGs targets, it is imperative for us to foster sustainable partnerships between governments, other state actors, the civil society, and the private sector. This modality of collective action is particularly vital for building resilient health systems, whose importance in enabling us to withstand future pandemics and other health crises can no longer be disputed. For this reason, Kenya will continue to strongly support the development of legally binding World Health Organization international instrument to anchor global solidarity and promote equity. The fact of the matter is that the COVID-19 pandemic exposed for all the world to see the severe deficit of these critical values in our present multilateral configuration. Global supply chains remained impervious to demands in the global south generally and Africa in particular. Unequal access to vaccines underscored this unjust and unequal situation with unforgettable clarity. Whenever human life, security, and welfare is in jeopardy, it is immoral to administer interventions through frameworks that are anchored on fundamental inequality. We are all witnesses to admirable demonstrations of effective solidarity in response to crises in various parts of the world. Our knowledge of the possibility of spontaneous yet resolute global solidarity reinforces the African exception as particularly repugnant. From genocides and civil conflict to famine and pandemics, the African continent is consistently left behind to bear the brunt of weak solidarity and disastrous failure of multilateralism. History indicates the last time Africa was the focal point of strong and effective multilateralism and multilateral consensus was during the Berlin Conference of 1884-1885, and the character of the ensuing interventions casts a long shadow to date. Not to put too fine a point to it, the failure of multilateralism during crises which relegate the people of Africa outside the cycle of moral consideration and normalizes humanitarian neglect and other casual injustices are failures of humanity. Nothing about Africa, and I say nothing about Africa, or its people makes it acceptable for this type of failure to persist in this era. And we have an urgent moral duty to do better, and to right this wrong. For decades, Africa has borne the brunt of 3 epidemics: the HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria. I applaud innovative partnerships like the Global Fund for their progress in addressing the 3 menaces, and also welcome the ambitious targets set for the 7th replenishment cycle. Kenya is committed to supporting the Global Fund and implementing the agreed targets in order to actualize our pledge at the replenishment conference. Kenya calls upon all countries implementing the Global Fund programs, especially fellow African states, to remain at the forefront in championing for successful replenishment of the fund. This way, the mobilization of much-needed resources is enhanced, bringing us closer to the final elimination of these dangerous diseases. In conclusion, Kenya joins the Secretary General in calling for the strengthening of multilateralism as the only sustainable path to a peaceful, stable, and prosperous world for all. This is the imperative of our time and the call of this moment. It is time to work on the trust deficit with stronger conviction that none of us is really safe until all of us are safe. The theme of the 77th session, and I quote, "A watershed moment, transformative solutions to interlocking challenges," end of quote, demands that we recognize the crises we must confront are interlinked in a complicated way. They can only be effectively addressed through more imaginative strategies and innovative formula. A population of 8 billion people in a densely networked world increasingly looks up to the multilateral system as the anchor for their individual aspirations directly and indirectly through robust national frameworks. Increasingly, therefore, the United Nations system is expected to be responsive to these needs, and for the proceedings in this forum, in a forum like this, to speak to ordinary people in far-flung reaches of our incredibly diverse globe. It is impossible to address all their individual needs directly, but it is possible to respond to all of them by speaking with conviction to the universal values of equality, inclusion, justice, solidarity, and collective action, and by making sure that all our interventions effectively reflect them with clarity. The integrity of the international order must be measured by the distance separating our resolutions, consensus, and agreement from decisions, actions, committed interventions, and effective solutions. A watershed moment, therefore, demands that we reduce that gap drastically and quickly. Kenya pursues numerous essential domestic agenda through the multilateral framework. We are heavily invested in the strength, effectiveness, and eventual success of all interventions formulated by the United Nations. It is important that the output of this and other similar fora achieve immediate resonance in the minds and lives of our youth still seeking opportunity to express and actualize themselves, our farmers working to feed nations, our Juakali entrepreneurs striving in pursuit of success in the informal economy, and our professionals who formulate policy, implement strategy, and monitor service delivery in public and private sectors. Africa places immense value in the international community and the tremendous possibilities it can unlock through inclusive, sustainable, and effective action to transform the lives of our people and establish lasting peace, security, and shared prosperity. This watershed moment is our chance to turn the key and open this door of opportunity. We can make progress in addressing the triple global threats and liberate ourselves from the shame of past failures of multilateralism. At this watershed moment, we must not only choose, but also act decisively to bequeath our children and their children a greener, safer, healthier, and more abundant earth. Let us do it together, inclusive.
The Assembly will now hear